cycle anyways. Where's all this stuff coming from? What exactly, how does Mother Nature work with this? What's all this hype about global warming? Well, this is the carbon cycle, right? And once again, if you're going to do, scientific study, you look for the most significant variables. If I'm going to do a study on weight loss, I'd look at the caloric intake, the amount of exercise, okay? I wouldn't look at what type of shoes they're wearing or how many cars they have in the garage. Those are probably going to be pretty insignificant. I'd look at the big guns, caloric intake and the exercise, right? So if you're going to look at global warming, you think, let's look at where all the CO2 comes from. That's probably most likely a small tweak in a big fish is a lot more likely than a big increase in a small fish. So look here. What does Mother Nature do? The oceans create most of our CO2. Right? Huge amounts of CO2. I bet you didn't even know that. I'm just going to put this in relative scales because these are billions of tons. So you've got a scale of 100 to 115 being circulated by the oceans. Okay? Plants breathing produce 40 to 50. How many people knew trees created CO2? All right. I ask that normally. People go, plants create CO2? Are you nuts? Okay? Decay and residue creates another 50 to 60. Put this thing in perspective. Man produces 5. Trees breathing create 10 times more CO2 than we do. Right? And that's not even a big contributor. Okay? The oceans are. Man's a drop in the bucket. Alright? More importantly, everyone's had chemistry. Everyone knows what a titration is, right? Everyone knows what a buffer is. If you don't have a saturated buffer, what happens if you increase the concentration of something? It just gets dissolved, right? Like with hemoglobin and when you're breathing, right? You breathe in oxygen, it increases the partial pressure of oxygen, so it binds to the hemoglobin. The hemoglobin goes to some area where the partial pressure of oxygen is low, and it releases it, right? Well, there's something called the Henry's Law, and this is something the global warming people can never get away with unless they can prove that the oceans are saturated with CO2. Henry's Law is the law of diffusion of gas in a liquid. Mother Nature regulates CO2 through the oceans. If we put more CO2 up in the atmosphere and the partial pressure was too high for where she wanted it, she'd absorb it in the ocean. So if we pulled CO2 out, Mother Nature would simply release it. It's like the blood supply of the ocean. There's no way they can get away from Henry's Law. Okay? If we go around and stop producing CO2 and Mother Nature doesn't like it, she has a temperature and a pressure that she targets. We pull CO2 out, she's going to pump more out through the oceans. Unless they can show that the oceans are saturated with CO2, which they're not. Also, if you look at who produces CO2, Mother Nature produces a heck of a lot. Forests, there's 500,000 forest fires burning just right now. Each one of these trees going up is an SUV full of smoke. Right? Huge amounts. Mother Nature, when she pollutes, she pollutes big. Okay? She pollutes so much that in one volcano, she can create a year without a sun.